So, Michael, this week, The Suicide Squad, the movie, entered theatres in the United States. And do you want to have a guess how many dollars it raked in on its opening 3 days?
Well, you wouldn't tell me to guess unless it was a lot or not very much. My instinct would be to say not very much because of COVID being a thing. So some hilariously low amount, like 17 million.
20. So, okay. Yeah, a good guess. Here's the thing, Michael. Of course, this is a big story because that is quite low, isn't it? Considering the first movie made $750 million. This one only making $20 million in the United States in its first 3 days is quite pathetic, really. And Warner Brothers were expecting $30 million in its first 3 days. So yeah, basically, many people are saying it could be the fact that this is a sequel that no one really asked for, or I think this is the main reason. It's streaming. Like HBO have just completely killed. Why would you go out to a cinema when there's a chance of getting COVID when you can just stay inside? And this is the thing. Like I think it's a risk to release movies anyway. I don't think there's been many box office successes so far, but definitely I just don't get HBO's business model at all. Like if you want to have a movie succeed in theaters, then don't release it on your streaming platform as well. Of course, Warner Brothers and HBO, they're owned by the same people. So yeah, it just seems crazy to me, and it seems like they have committed. What's the word I'm looking for, Michael? Begins with an S.
Oh yes. And shitty policies.
Shitty
business practice.
Yeah, shitty. Yeah, that's it. Shitty business practices. Not suicide. That's Again, it's just I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be doing with June as well. I'm very much looking forward to see that. But yeah, anyway, Michael, in breaking news here, movie executives aren't that smart. More as we have it at 11.
This is the biggest blunder HBO has made since they set up 5 spin-offs for Game of Thrones and then decided to have it end in a way that everybody hated and completely destroyed its cultural relevance overnight.
Yeah, they're not smart people, are they, Michael? They're not smart.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the film Boyz N the Hood. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Boyz N the Hood?
Certainly, Michael. By the way, I made a mistake at the end of last week's review. I said it was a 25-year anniversary. It's, of course, a 30-year anniversary for Boyz N the Hood. Yes, because it was released in 1991. So, Boyz N the Hood. Michael, can you tell me what the N stands for in Boyz N the Hood? What the N word means in Boyz N the Hood?
I think we all know it stands for not, because of course it's a story about them trying to leave the hood by going to college and succeeding by going to Georgia.
I was trying to trick you into saying another word.
Naggers.
Which, yeah, it was naggers. No, unfortunately you didn't say it. But anyway, so Boyz N the Hood is a 1991 American coming-of-age hood drama film written and directed by John Singleton in his feature directional debut. Now, here's what's interesting about this, Michael. We have reviewed one other movie this year by John Singleton. Can you tell me what movie that was?
Is it a bad movie?
It's quite bad, yeah.
Is it Striptease?
It's not Striptease, no.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I could... The thing is, we've reviewed a lot of bad movies. Is it one of the Fast and Furious?
Yes, it is, yes.
Oh. So, I don't know, maybe the third one?
No, the second one. Remember the second one was directed by that Asian guy who said...
Yeah, sorry, that makes sense. Yeah, I was getting my films confused, actually. I was thinking to myself that the second one was the Asian one, because those films just blur together to me.
Yeah, he said that the script was 20 years out of date and so backwards. Again, we'll never get to see what was in that original Tokyo Drift script. But yeah, John Singleton also directed Too Fast, Too Furious, which of course we reviewed this year. And yeah, it's quite weird that... Of course, because that movie is quite different to his other work. Yeah. And
although his interest in cars means that he's made 2 films analysing the contents of hoods.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a good joke. But yeah, there's many... The thing is, John Singleton died in 2019. And I read a couple of obituaries for him. And they remarked how weird it was that he was doing these movies like Boyz N the Hood. And then he transitioned to Too Fast, Too Furious, which was completely different to what he had done previously. But of course, this was his first movie His directorial debut was Boyz in the Hood for John Singleton. It stars Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., Morris Chestnut, Lawrence Fishburne, Nia Long, Regina King, and Angela Bassett. Interestingly, Michael, it was also written by John Singleton, which we'll get onto in a bit, but just tell me, how old do you think John Singleton was when he directed this?
I feel like it's probably very young, like maybe early 20s, like 23.
Did you know that already?
No.
Okay,
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounded by your setup. It's like, well, I'm thinking early 20s, not 22. That'd be too young. 24 seems too old. 23 seems right. Oh, that's right. Oh, how lucky of a guess that was.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually considering going I was going to be like 19 or something like very well. I mean, 19 not that much younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like early 20 seems more realistic. So 23.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we are doing the far more important job of reviewing it at an older age.
Yes, indeed. Singleton, by the way, was the youngest person and the first African American to be nominated for Best Director.
Really?
Yeah, so the youngest person...
Took them long enough.
Yeah, the youngest person makes sense. I find it crazy that in 1991, the first black director was nominated for Best Director. That's crazy. But anyway, so the movie was released, Boyz in the Hood, on July the 12th, 1991, in the United States of America. So yeah, we're a bit over 30 years and a month. And Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for Boyz in the Hood?
Well, I'm thinking quite low, surely. I mean, I don't really know exactly. Obviously, I know a lot of these actors are quite important now. I'm assuming based on their age, apart from anything else, that wouldn't have been the case as much. Maybe, could it be as low as like 5 million?
6.5.
Okay.
So that's a very good guess. Very, very good guess. You're on 5.
It's like, considering the fact I also guessed, what was it, for the Suicide Squad as well. I'm on track to get 3 good guesses.
Well, yeah, your Suicide Squad guess was a bit off, but it wasn't that bad considering how sometimes you do normally get them quite far off. But anyway, Michael, the box office, how much did this make at the theatres?
800 million. Let me think. I don't know. I don't think it would have made a huge amount, really. I mean, who would go to
black people?
Maybe 35 million.
57 million.
Okay.
So yeah, but you're a bit off. But I said black people because there's an article that I've extracted a bit from which the person who wrote the article talked about how they went to see the movie as a kid, and a lot of black people did because it was the first time.
The urban market.
Sorry.
The urban market.
The urban market, yes. And of course, we can analyse similar things with Do the Right Thing as well, which was part of the reason why this movie was, taken up in the first place, because of the success of Do the Right Thing. But anyway, Michael, Boyz in the Hood, did you like this movie?
Yes, I thought this film was an enjoyable film. I thought it was an entertaining little personal drama.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think here's the thing: we're analysing it 30 years later, and it's kind of the same thing. I think I said about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Although I do like this movie more than Raiders.
It doesn't have any Welshmen in blackface. That's your problem.
Well, he wasn't in blackface. He just was really tanned.
No, he was in, I guess, brownface.
Yeah, but he was just doing an accent. I believe Rhys Jones in that movie, or whatever his Welsh name was. But yeah, no, Boyz in the Hood in. Look, it's not the greatest movie ever, but the thing is, of course, it was one of the first pieces of media which examined, I guess, the black experience, shall we say, in America, thoughtfully. Yeah,
well, I mean, what's it called? Song of the South walked, so this goes on.
Song of the South, yes. Yeah, basically it was in 2002 the United States Library of Congress deemed it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry. So yeah, just 11 years after its initial release. So 1 year, because I think the maximum is 10 years. And so this was... the minimum is 10 years, and this was, of course, 11. So yeah, basically it was culturally very significant. But if this movie came out today, it would not be significant. It'll just be like, oh, well, we've seen this before. And you can see it in, other... that's the thing. None of John Singleton's work after this was ever as popular or as famous as this. Maybe because, this one's got Ice Cube in it. But yeah, that is the case. And yeah, of course, you look at the talent as well. I mentioned Ice Cube that came out of this movie. Of course, he was already famous, but Cuba Gooding Jr. and Regina King as well. Just a lot of Lawrence Fishburne as well. How can I forget? Just a lot of talent in this movie. And yeah, it did seem like a very significant movie. But again, you make this movie some years later, it's not that significant. Have you've seen The Wire, Michael, or have you? No,
actually, I haven't seen The Wire. It's one of those. I'm kind of slowly working my way through a lot of the TV shows everyone always talks about, which I haven't seen. Yeah. And The Wire is definitely up there.
The Wire in season 4, to a lesser extent than this movie, because it does look at kids at different ages, but it also does cover some of the similar themes that this movie does. Of course, it's set in Baltimore, not South Central Los Angeles, but yeah, basically, I think I really do like the movie. It's good. But the reason why it's so famous, basically, is because of the cast as well, but also because it was literally like the first of these, or one of the first of these movies, because of course you have to mention Do the Right Thing, one of the first of these movies, which we'll get through when talking about how this movie was created. So yeah, basically one of the first movies to look at the black experience in these inner cities and like carefully look at it and thoughtfully look at it. And that is pretty unique. In the year 1991, it was pretty unique. Anyway, Michael, we shall get into that in a bit. But firstly, nitpicks. How many do you have?
I have 3 nitpicks.
Okay, I have 0. So you go first.
Okay, that's interesting.
And last.
So I've got 2 in really quick succession, which is, how does it take him so long to rake up those leaves? That's very... It's like, they do a little montage, and it seems to last the whole day. And it's a bit like, from sun up till sundown. And you think to yourself, how does it take him so long to rake up?
What do you mean? Raking leaves is hard.
Well, I mean, I have raked up leaves before, and I feel like I would say it's kind of tedious with the whole, like, getting them into the bag and stuff.
Yeah, it's like every little one. That's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is some perfectionism, but no, I don't know. Yeah, it just seems to me like if raking leaves took that long, then nobody would ever rake leaves. And this one's actually like even more. Like, I found this weird. When Lawrence Fishburne says, go through your duties, and then says they're the same duties you have on the weekend, and the kid says, clean the tub, and it's like, I gotta clean that tub? And it's confusing, because why is he acting like surprised when these are apparently the exact same things he has to do every weekend anyway? Like, it's like, is he acting as if it seems like a contradiction, because it's like, on the one hand he does say, literally, you've got all the same jobs you have to do on the weekend, and then he basically lists off the jobs, and he's like, I've got to do that? And it's like, well, you do it every weekend, so yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyway, and then the final one is just some skepticism as to the range of a sawed-off shotgun. My understanding of sawed-off shotguns, being that they're sawed-off, is that they don't really have much range, because obviously they're more in it for the spray. And I was just thinking to myself, he was kind of far away. I'm not an expert, so I'm willing to just say, maybe this is almost like a nit question, because I genuinely don't know. Yeah, but I just think to myself, in my head I was like, I don't know, I feel like sawed-off shotguns, I've seen them in other media, and generally, like, they're designed, like I say, for the immediate spray of somebody in very close proximity, not a ranged weapon.
Yeah, in Call of Duty, that wouldn't be a one-shot kill. Well, to be fair, it does take 2 shots to bring him down, but,
Yeah.
And thinking of in Call of Duty, you probably need like 3 or 4 to bring him down from that range. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, but life is not Call of Duty, Michael. And to be fair, who knows? Like, maybe that guy's just insanely accurate with the shotgun, Yeah, he's done it a lot of times. But anyway... I didn't have any nitpicks or lit picks for that matter. So, the concept for this movie, Michael, the concept of boys in the hood. Well, there are boys and they are in the hood. So that explains it, basically, doesn't it? Now,
it was really uncreative of them. Just decided to, just went to a neighborhood and was like, oh, I'll make a story about this. Anyone could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how they came up with Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, of course, the title was based off the Eazy-E song. You know that one, Michael?
No, the only Eazy-E song I know is the Real Motherfucking G's.
Yeah, well, God, you know what? I'm just gonna sing a bit. I'm gonna rap a bit, sorry. Yeah. Because the boys in the hood, they're always hard. They come talking their trash, and they'll pull your yard, I think.
Oh, wait, no, I do think despite the fact that I don't think you're doing a thoroughly accurate recreation, I think I do recognise that.
Nothing left, not to be legit.
The boys in the hood, they're da-da-da-da. Is that like kind of the tune?
Yeah, the boys in the hood, they're always hard. They're going, nothing left, not see legit. And I remember the last line, which is, actually, you know what, what is it? It's don't something me boy, because I ain't saying shit. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. But anyway, it's a good song. I just because I remember parts of it. I listened to it like years ago, but I remember parts of it. Yeah. So Eazy-E, by the way, didn't like the he didn't like the movie. Think it was a bit cookie cutter for him. I think that's the impression he gave off. Probably because Ice Cube was in it, and Ice Cube, of course.
Yeah, they had a beef.
Yeah, they weren't getting along really at this time in 1991, were Eazy-E and Ice Cube. But anyway, so let's talk about the groundbreaking nature of this film, because it was a deeply personal look at growing up in South Central Los Angeles, and of course it was created by John Singleton, who had grown up in South Central Los Angeles. And I'm going to read you an extract from BBC News. Drawing heavily on his own teenage years, Singleton introduced a largely oblivious world to the harsh urban realities of too many African American lives. Here was a tableau of casual gunplay, police intimidation, and drive-by shootings that left audiences shaken, shocked, and deeply moved. Well, unless you grew up in those areas. I will say it's like that Chappelle bit after he's talking about the LA riots and Rodney King, where he goes, in that white voice that he does, like, "Well, honey, look at this. It appears the police have been beating up black people like hotcakes," and he doesn't use the word black people. He uses the N-word. But yeah, it's like that when it's like, yeah, didn't you guys know this was happening? And this movie apparently opened a lot of people's eyes. Like, apparently the standing ovation it got at the Cannes Film Festival lasted for ages. Like, people, like, as the BBC News extract shows, it's like, wow, did you know this is going on in the hood, this kind of thing? Black people are just, involved in all this shit. They didn't know how bad it was. Just like, I think up until what happened with Rodney King, a lot of white America just didn't know what the hell was going on with black people and the police. And of course, this movie, it had a cultural impact where it grossed $57 million in 1991. So I don't know what that is today. So, but of course, that Rodney King thing was absolutely massive. So yeah, basically, it was around this time where people who weren't in these areas were finally understanding what was actually going on in these communities, and that, you know what, police officers, maybe they aren't there to serve and protect, for instance, the communities which they are meant to. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I think basically, don't they even say something about that in the film? Oh, it's at the end, obviously, when they're talking about how, like, there's the news thing about the foreigners and kind of the conflict in the foreign world, and he says, they care about that, but they don't talk about all of the people dying just, like, on their back door. I remember in the classic monster movie Primeval, they go to Uganda to find a giant man-eating crocodile, and one of the white kind of, I think she's a journalist woman, and she's talking about how horrible the ethnic conflict is in Uganda, and the black guy who's with them says, like, shit, white people don't care about black on black violence when it's right down the road, but they care about it when it's halfway across the world. Anyway, so I guess that's, and I always thought to myself, you know what, good point. A terrible guy, not terrible guy, but a guy from a terrible monster movie. That's some really good racial commentary.
Yeah, no, that's some decent racial commentary, yeah. What movie was that, did you say?
It's called Primeval, and it's a really stupid movie because it's a very cheap movie about, as you can imagine, a very cheap movie about a giant man-eating crocodile. So, yeah. It's pretty good. Okay.
Anyway, so upon completion, Singleton, this is from Wikipedia by the way, was protective of his script, insisting that he be the one to direct the project. So basically he wrote it in the mid-80s, basically. Later explaining at a retrospective screening of the film, "I wasn't going to have somebody from Idaho or Encino direct this movie." Wow. What if they were black, John?
Maybe he's the real racist.
Yeah, exactly. No, obviously we know what he's saying. He sold the script to Columbia Pictures in 1990, who greenlit the film immediately out of interest in making a film similar to the comedy drama film, what, Michael?
Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing, which was, of course, a success, released in 1989. Yeah, it's crazy, of course. Like, that is set in New York, and this is set in Los Angeles. Two young black directors making a name for themselves, directing, their own movie at a young age. Just, crazy how, that's the thing, it's crazy how it happened at the same time, but this movie literally it may have not only happened because of Do the Right Thing, but that was, pretty significant, obviously. So, the role of Doughboy was specifically written for Ice Cube, who Singleton met while working as an intern on the what show, Michael?
The
guy who stars in Coming to America.
Oh, the guy who stars in Coming to America, the Eddie Murphy show?
The other one.
Oh, what's his name?
Arsenio Hall.
Arsenio Hall, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Or Arsenio, I'm not sure, but yeah. Singleton also noted the studio was unaware of Ice Cube's standing as a member of rap group NWA.
Which stands for what, Luke?
You know what? I'm trying to think of something funny.
African American individuals with attitude.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of something funny that starts with N.
Neighbours.
Yeah, but that's not funny, is it?
There was I remember there used to be a kind of leftist YouTuber who had like a parody like rap group called Nazis Without Aptitude.
Okay.
And it would be like, so it was like parody kind of like rap songs from a right-wing perspective.
How about NWA stands for Not White Americans?
Well, hold on, actually, isn't there literally the line in Straight Outta Compton where Paul Giamatti says, "What's NWA stand for? No whites allowed."
You know what? I don't remember that, but that's great. That's a good recollection. Yeah, no whites allowed, or no white Americans, whatever. So Singleton claims Gooding and Chestnut were cast because they were the first ones to show up to the auditions, which is great. While Fishburne was cast after Singleton met him on the set of Pee-wee's Playhouse, where Singleton worked as a production assistant and security guard. Basically, I just find that funny. Like he just like these people who he was just happened to be working with, and all these people who turned up to his audition first. It's like, okay, yeah, you can be in my movie, and it was an incredibly successful movie. That kind of story, I just don't feel like it could happen today.
It's very wholesome.
Yeah, no, it is. It is quite wholesome. Yeah. So anyway, by the way, he has a cameo in the film. Does John Singleton, Michael? Do you know what that is?
I don't know. Does he play one of the guys at the end who gets shot, like one of the bad guys, maybe?
No. That's because that wouldn't be a cameo, would it?
Oh, so I guess they're too central. Okay. Does he play the white teacher at the beginning?
No, he does not play the white
teacher. Oh, is he maybe the cop? I don't know if that counts as a cameo.
No, again,
the cop's too old.
Yeah.
Cop's too old.
Yeah.
Someone very is he? So you know when what's his face? Lawrence Fishburne is kind of giving the lecture in the place, and like the kids are hanging around. Does he play one of those kids who are hanging around?
No, he doesn't. He plays the postman. Oh, if you remember that scene.
Oh, who delivers the results?
Yeah, who delivers the results to Ricky's mom before he gets shot. Anyway, so the plot basically of this, we've gone through the concept. The plot is it's quite simple: coming of age story in this black community, which is of course deprived, suffers a lot of problems. Follows these three kids. One of them, like I just said, is Doughboy, who is played by Ice Cube. He's a member of a gang who was in prison or juvie, as they say, for many years. Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Trey. This guy who's quite smart. He wants to go to college. His dad's Lawrence Fishburne. He's been raised right, but he still finds himself in some problems. And then of course Ricky, who wants to be a college athlete. He wants to be a running back for USC. But then, of course, he gets gunned down in a very sad scene, unfortunately. So, yeah, those are your characters, and it's a coming of age story basically. We start off in 1984. We spend about half an hour in 1984 with them as kids, and then we spend the remaining 1.5 hours of the movie. Well, it's not 1.5. It's like 1 hour 15 minutes. In 1991, in what would be the present day back then. So yeah, that's the plot basically. Anything to say on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think really the main thing is it doesn't really have like a coherent plot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that's the case for a lot of coming of age.
Yeah, there's lots of films. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's not a bad thing, but I just think it's worth noting. Just when we're talking about the plot, obviously it's not a case of like here's the villain and here's the mystery and here's how it progresses from one plot point to the other. Obviously, it's pretty much. I think you kind of get the sense of when. So really, it's just when the kind of bad hombres, that's what I'm going to call them, show up kind of like looking menacing, very much like at the beginning of like the third act, is the sense in which like, okay, now there's like an actual kind of very clear sense, I guess, of like a direction for the story. Yeah. So at that point you can be like, oh, okay, this is probably, because before that it's just a general sense of like, oh, the hood's a pretty rough place to be, that's not great. And obviously once those guys show up, it starts getting a bit more menacing. You're like, okay, this is probably going to end with some kind of substantial confrontation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, it's fine. It just means that there's not really much to talk about in terms of the plot.
Yeah, those guys, are they having like an underground race or meet up, whatever, and those guys show up, and that's like an hour 10, 15 into the movie, I think. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, basically you have what is about 45 minutes. Although Ricky does take his test, which is of course quite impactful to the story, because he would have got in, of course, because he just passed. But
I've always thought it would be funny if he didn't get in. Just like comes back and results like 100 or something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, turns out he was an idiot.
Yeah. His mum looking at his score, is like 100 out. I was like, oh fucking it. Well, I guess he had no chance then. I mean, softens the blow a bit, doesn't it?
Sucks he has to go out like that.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's start off going through the movie then. So of course we start with Trey. He's like 11 years old, I think. And he basically he gets into a fight at school with this racist teacher who I like how she just seemingly lets this fight happen.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what she's
that's commentary. White America's letting the fight happen.
Is it commentary, or is she just being a really bad teacher? Like, because she does break up the fight, but like she just like waits until they're like right next to each other, slapping each other, which I thought was weird. But yeah, so firstly, Trey gets into the fight at school. That means he has to go live with his dad, Lawrence Fishburne. Actually, do you know what? I normally go through the plot, Michael, on Wikipedia. I didn't do it this time. So
did you remember it so well?
Yeah, well, I'll do it anyway. So, Boyz in the Hood follows Trey Styles, who is sent to live with his father, Furious Styles. By the way, that is just the greatest name ever.
Yeah,
Furious Styles, in South Central Los Angeles. Surrounded by the neighborhood's booming gang culture. The film's title is a double entendre, a play on the term boyhood, and a reference to the 1987 NWA rap song of the same name, written by Ice Cube.
But this film didn't take 12 years to make.
Oh, it didn't? No. Boyz in the Hood, Boyhood. Yeah, it all makes sense. Yeah, I'm just checking. It was performed by Eazy-E, and it was written by Ice Cube. Back when they were friends. Boyz in the Hood are always hard. But yeah, so that's the premise for the movie, of course. And yeah, of course we see Lawrence Fishburne, Michael, when he was like, I don't know, 30 years old. Isn't it just weird how young he is? Don't you think?
Yeah, I always think of him as like that wide old sage.
Yeah, of course he's most famous for being Morpheus in The Matrix, and even then, like that's only 8 years later, but he looks so different, or he just seems so different. I don't know, but yeah, he looks. It's weird looking at Lawrence Fishburne and thinking how young he is. I think the last movie I watched with him was in terms of his acting career was 2016 and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Remember that? He's the one who...
yeah, he just plays like a police officer, right?
No, not a police officer.
Army guy.
You're a fucking...
Does he not? Okay, in my head I imagined him as an army general.
We're not going to... You know what? We're not going to move on until you get this.
Is he a politician?
He's not a politician.
Or a judge?
He's not a judge.
He's some kind of authority.
I mean, I'm not sure I'd go with authority.
Okay. Is he a criminal?
He's not a criminal. Wow. That's what you jumped to, eh?
Is he a scientist?
He's not a scientist. I think this is guest 6 we are on right now.
So old Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne. Does he play Doomsday in mocap?
No, think of what happens in Dawn of Justice. What happens?
So Batman v Superman. I mean, I know to be honest, that film. So I know obviously there's Lex Luthor, who wants to. Oh god, so what is he? He has like these special terrorist.
It's nothing to do with Lex Luthor.
Oh, I know who he is. Sorry, I got it. He is a journalist.
He is that. He's not just a journalist.
He's the boss of the. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I remember it now because like to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I'd completely forgotten that Amy Adams was even in that film.
He's the editor of the Daily Planet.
Yes.
Yes, of course, and he's the one who tells Clark Kent, "No, we don't want any more articles on this Batman. We want you to cover the local high school football team." See what they're doing. Which is the best editor you could ever hope to have. Yeah, that's what I think of.
Lawrence Fishburne doesn't care about urban violence. How far he's fallen.
I know, right? I know. But of course, it's just weird. Yeah, I mean, it's not that smart thing to say. Oh, it's weird that someone who is old was once young. But, just compare the two. It is weird. But anyway, so basically he's this parent who wants to teach Trey responsibility so he, doesn't become a failure. Just like in Hillbilly Elegy, Michael. Remember that movie? Yeah, a similar theme there. Obviously this, slightly different. But yeah, immediately after he tells them that, there's an attempted burglary in his house, and we get a nice that nice scene with the police officer who just doesn't take him seriously, and then we start to see a theme in the movie which we'll talk about later, which is basically the contrast between what Lawrence Fishburne wants to tell his son and basically the systemic forces i.e. crime and also the police, which are preventing him from preventing him and Trey from living a good life, basically. Anyway, so we get a bit of Stand By Me, I guess a tribute to Stand By Me. I actually looked. John Singleton was influenced by Stand By Me in this movie, because of course you get this kid who goes, "Hey, do you wanna go see a dead body?" And so these four kids walk to see that dead body, and I love the contrast with Stand By Me, because in this movie the gang which are next to the dead body, they actually put it there, and it's not that crazy either. He's just like, he just smells. And then the gang steals his football after that. Did you you like that contrast, Michael, between those two?
No, yeah, I did. I thought it really spoke to the reality of how their situation is different. I guess, the desensitization to death, which obviously comes into the plot a lot throughout this film.
Yeah, it's a nice little taster. Even from an early age, these kids are just used to that. And of course, having watched The Wire season 4, similar things are explored in that. I specify season 4 because, of course, the seasons look at different aspects, and season 4 specifically,
I had heard that.
Yeah, is about education. Anyway, so of course, Doughboy, then they get back to the houses, and they go fishing first, don't they? Lawrence Fishburne and his son. They talk about how a black man has no place in the army, which we'll talk about later. And then they get back to their neighborhood, and of course, Doughboy gets arrested. And we don't see him again until 7 years later. And we fast forward now to 1991. And I just want to comment, Michael, on how the young actors look like the old actors. How good the comparison is. Because
are you sure it's not because you think they all look the same?
No. Well,
good. That's a relief.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess you could say that. That's more a racist thing you say about Asian people rather than black people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean you could do that like an Asian film where it's like where the characters aren't even supposed to be. I can't think of any Asian films that have a time skip. But you just be like, I like how Jackie Chan looks like the younger version of himself. And it's like, no,
yeah, it's
different characters.
Really great casting there. Yeah. Anyway, so Ice Cube obviously plays Doughboy. And I think that does generally work. He kind of looks like him. I think it's good. Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Trey. Again, that kind of works. They don't look that similar, but it can work. I think the girl Brandy, that one does work. I mean, you only see that kid for like 5 seconds, but I was like, yeah, no, they do look quite similar. Maybe it's just the hairstyle. Maybe it's easier for girls to look the same because of the hair thing. Chris. The other kid that got arrested, he kind of looks like the older version of himself. But Ricky, who's of course the football player, the guy who eventually gets shot, that is the best one. They look so similar, it's crazy. It's like he's the actor is the older brother of the.
It's like this film took 12 years to make.
It is like the film took 12 years to make. Yeah, like Ricky at 11 looks so similar to Ricky at 17. That was absolutely, or 18, however old he is there. That's great casting. Yeah, but the problem is, Michael, Cuba Gooding Jr. looks too old. Like he has.
Yeah, he does look pretty old.
He has wrinkles on his forehead. And the thing is, in real life, he was only 23 years old at the time. But it doesn't matter because he doesn't look 18 or 17.
Yeah.
He just doesn't. And with Ice Cube, it's even worse because of his beard. Even though again at the time he was only 22, they just look too old for 18 or 17.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've said this to you before. I think you do get so much older when you're 18 compared to like 5 years later. Like it's not that big a difference you'd think, but it actually is quite a lot of the time. And those guys, they just do not. I mean, I guess you could find actors that are 23 and look like they're 18, but like especially these guys, that they don't look like they're 18. And again, you get rid of Ice Cube's beard. If Cuba Gooding Jr. doesn't have those wrinkles on his forehead, I think it works. But that was kind of an issue throughout the movie. I just had a hard time kind of believing that these guys were like 17 or 18 years old. Do you think that's too harsh?
Black don't crack.
Sorry?
They say black don't crack.
Yeah, but that's when you're like 50 though.
I know, yeah. Yeah, it's not like black people walk around looking like babies their whole life.
Exactly.
Which would be I agree with you. I think, to be honest, it's something you're kind of used to. I agree with you about how it doesn't really matter how old they are, it's how old they look. Like I'm always reminded of the fact that and I find this really interesting. Andrew Garfield was older than Tobey Maguire when they first played Spider-Man respectively. And yet Tobey Maguire just looks like a man. and Andrew Garfield looks like a teenager. And it doesn't really matter that Tobey Maguire was technically younger. And that's always my go-to example. It's not reality that matters. It's the perception. So yeah, I'd agree with you. It's a bit of a problem. I think, considering the fact that it is about perception, you would think, yeah, they should just go to the effort to try to make the characters look, decently young. And obviously, yeah, having them rocking beards just doesn't really work with that.
Yeah, particularly Ice Cube. I think if you shaved Ice Cube's beard, like, that could work. But with Cuba Gooding Jr., it's those wrinkles, man. They're so prominent on his head. Obviously, he does a very good acting job. But yeah, I can believe he's 18 years old when you're not looking at him like directly on. When you see the side of his face, it's like, oh yeah, there's a young kid who's just trying to figure out his place in this very harsh world he's been brought up in. And then you turn around, and it's like, oh no, he's not a young kid. He's at least 27.
And then you don't care anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the fact that Ice Cube is in this movie, Michael. Yes. Because of course it is quite interesting. The reason why Ice Cube was so successful and NWA is because they spoke about this kind of stuff, that is in this movie. Basically, it draws on, NWA, basically, their whole, I guess, the reason...
Shtick.
Yeah, shtick, that's a good word for it, was basically drawing on their own experiences of racism, excessive policing, and yeah, they made inherently political music, and of course this movie is inherently political too. The group's members were known, of course, for their deep hatred of police, which sparked a lot of controversy over the years. We all remember that song, Fuck the Police, Michael, don't we? Said like that. Not. Go on, you say it, Michael.
What's Fuck the Police. Coming straight from the underground.
A young
African-American individual has it bad because I'm brown.
They think,
and not the other colour, so the police think they have the authority to kill a minority.
That is one of my favourite lines. They think they have the authority to kill a minority. It just works so well. But yeah, I love that line. But anyway, so yeah, fuck the police. That was
the Popo.
That is sorry.
The Popo.
Yeah, the Popo.
That's what they're called.
Yeah, and of course the group's debut album, Straight Out of Compton, basically started this new gangster rap era. As the production and social commentary in their lyrics were revolutionary within the genre. This is from Wikipedia, by the way. That's why his inclusion in this movie, for me, doesn't feel inauthentic or unnatural. Of course, it is Ice Cube. I know that every scene it's like, oh, this is Ice Cube. This is one of the most famous people on the planet. But if he was less talented, this could have been him in real life. Like, this could have just been what he was doing.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, he's obviously incredibly talented to become like, and all of those people like Dr. Dre and Eazy, incredibly talented people to, have the success that they did, revolutionizing their genre as well at the same time. And yeah, if he wasn't as talented, this could just be Ice Cube. He was from South Central Los Angeles. He grew up in, I think it was Compton. Of course, Straight Out of Compton. It would make sense, yeah. He grew up in Compton. So yeah, that's why I don't have a problem with him being in this movie, even though he's of course very famous. It's because, this is his experience and could have easily been his experience for longer. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it is unfortunate that he then went on to star in the film Friday, which I don't know if you know much about it, but it did originate. You ever seen the meme of people go, damn?
Yes.
Yeah, that's from the film Friday. It's functionally a hood stoner comedy, where it's basically like him and his buddy hang out on their porch smoking weed and just interacting with people. But yeah, it's very much a comedy, which is it's a bit awkward because it's like you're watching Ice Cube in a 90s hood film where he's just hanging out with his buddies and it's just played completely as a joke. And then you have this film and it's like very serious. But it's fine. I can't blame this film for Friday later on making Ice Cube seem like less of a serious character.
Yeah, also, by the way, of course, we have to shout out John Singleton for making Ice Cube into an actor. He saw his talent clearly, and also Cuba Gooding Jr., Regina King, like we mentioned, Lawrence Fishburne, etc. All had great careers, and they all starred in this movie. So yeah, John Singleton, man, he really could pick his acts well, couldn't he? Even if apparently they were just the first to get there to their auditions, like you said. Anyway, so the next 30 minutes of the movie basically is, we're just establishing characters. Doughboy is a young adult, who's joined the Crips. He's in a gang. Ricky is now the star running back for Crenshaw High School. Lives with his single mother Brenda still and his girlfriend Shanice and their infant son. And yeah, he's being recruited by colleges to play football for them, specifically USC. And as you'll know, Michael, that's a pretty big deal, right?
No, yeah, Luke, I agree. It's a very big deal.
Do you know how big a deal it is?
Tell me.
Well, he's the running back for USC, or he's trying to be that. Do you know who else was a running back for USC and even won a Heisman playing in that role? That's the best trophy you can win in college football. Best individual player.
Is it a black football player?
It is a black football player. You're right.
I don't know any black football players.
Yeah, you do.
Do I?
Yeah, you do.
So obviously it's not Tim Tebow.
It's not Tim Tebow.
Tom Brady.
It's not Tom Brady.
Because neither of those people are black. A black football player. Oh, was it that guy who's became an actor? O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, it is O.J. Simpson, but of course he's not really famous for becoming an actor now, is he?
Sorry, no, he's famous. Yeah, you're right. He's famous actually for allegedly murdering somebody.
No, he's famous for trying to help find the killer. For whoever murdered his wife, and also whoever else. What was the other guy who got murdered?
Oh, Ron Goldman.
Yeah, Ron Goldman. Yeah, fucking Ron Goldman. But yeah, no. Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. Who knows if they were killed by O.J. Simpson? We know. Who knows? And basically O.J. was the running back for USC back in the day, and this guy is trying to follow in his footsteps. And I'm not, of course, the O.J.
You're not suggesting he's going to become a mass murderer.
No, I'm not. I'm just talking about the football, strictly the football stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, O.J. He was on trial for murder in '94. This movie comes out in '91. So I wonder if if this movie came out after the trial, that'd still be
it would be controversial.
Yeah, the school he's going for, because obviously what it was associated with OJ. But anyway, but USC is a great school though for football, apparently, even though they haven't been that successful recently. But anyway, so Trey, of course, the main character, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., he's a responsible teenager, works at a clothing shop at the Fox Hills Mall, and aspires to attend college with his girlfriend Brandy. Their relationship is strained over Trey's desire to have sex, while Brandy, a devout Catholic, wishes to wait until after marriage. That is weird, man, that you'd have a Catholic angle in this.
It is a bit strange.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that, but apparently that those people exist in South Central LA too.
I mean, maybe it's just there just to show that there's multiple facets to hood life.
Exactly. So I do like this. I said 30 because like the 30-minute. Well, so the first 30 minutes is of course when they're in 1984, then the next 30 minutes up until the hour point, obviously, and at that hour point is when Ricky is taking his SAT test to try and get into college. So this is it's about 30 minutes of nothing really happens. It's just basically getting you to know these characters, it's just these kids living their lives, and it does set up the ending to the movie to some extent because you're more invested in these characters because of it, and as long as it's not too boring and if it's done well, then it works. And of course that's what you get this period in a lot of coming of age movies, like this 30-minute period where this stuff kind of happens. And I don't mind that the plot doesn't progress. I don't mind it at all because the characters are good, they're interesting, you get invested, and I think it's done well. So that this period is fine for me, Michael. What do you think?
No, yeah, basically I agree with you. I think it's I guess it's sort of just establishing a bit of a day in life thing to make it feel a bit more real. And I guess sometimes when you have characters being totally driven by a plot, it makes them feel less real as characters. And I think sometimes it can work, and I guess very good films can pull it off. But I think ultimately, if you've got to kind of choose, and if you're doing a drama, you don't want it to be plot. You want to just have moments to, I guess, let the characters breathe. Yeah. Where it's not always about, trying to get to the next step. Yeah, that's like coming of age movies. It's not just plot. And this isn't that, but if it's done well, it's all good. And I enjoyed it. So, Michael, Furious Styles is what we're going to talk about next, because they take their SAT test, do Ricky and Trey, and then they drive back to Trey's dad's house. Of course, Furious Styles. Sorry, not his house, his place of business, and they ask what he does, and then he decides to take them on a little journey into, I believe they're in Compton or whatever. And of course he talks about the war on drugs, how that's not black people's fault because they don't have the planes to get the drugs into the country. That's of course what the CIA does.
he doesn't go that far. But the way I will say, we'll talk about what he actually says in the scene. But the way the scene happens is so inorganic. By the way, you got a group of young black people cross the street, and you have this old timer who also happens to jump in on the conversation as soon as Furious starts, lecturing his son and Ricky.
Yeah.
It's just like, this just feels like so set up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it definitely felt quite inauthentic. It almost felt like something like you'd kind of see in like a direct-to-video kind of instructional video for like a kind of class or something. Like it would be like you'd see it in kind of like a best of the worst kind of thing. It would be like tips on the life of black youths in America, and then you just have like this guy like doing a little thing, and then all these teenagers walk up like, wow, I want to hear what you got to say. That's what it felt like to me. Kind of just like a situation where it's kind of simultaneously trying to be, I guess, informative, but also give the illusion of being a genuine narrative, and that makes it just come across as really, I guess, awkward.
Yeah, no, it's. Of course, Singleton's trying to do something here, but it's just like I'm not sure. I had to think about it, but yeah, it's just like, oh, how perfect for these different groups of people who have different perspectives to come to this exact situation and have a really authentic argument with different points of view about what's going on in the black community. Yeah, I think that's why maybe Eazy-E criticised it. Well, again, he probably criticised it because Ice Cube was in it, but he probably also criticised it, or his criticism came from the scene where it's like, this is just like so fucking cookie, because I can't remember what he said. I'd have to go and look it up. But yeah, anyway, so let's talk about what actually Furious Styles talks about, even if the scene coming together is a bit organic. Let's actually go through what he talks about. So, like I said, he talks about the war on drugs, and he also talks about gentrification, Michael. And
yes,
he's saying, well, we need to have black money, black businesses, and all that. And I think it's fair to say he failed on that, because LA has been gentrified quite heavily since the early 1990s. Of course, gentrification was also touched on in Do the Right Thing too. And I think that makes sense, considering, yuppies as a concept, where that was kind of invented in the 1980s. No longer were young people out in the suburbs. They were like coming into the inner cities and, of course, gentrifying the place. So, yeah, it makes sense that he'd be against it. And he is absolutely correct on how gentrification works. But, yeah, do you have anything to say on that?
No, yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is that I think on the subject of gentrification, my take, and I like to say the correct take, I think a lot of people might be like, well, hold on a minute, isn't it a bit kind of exclusionary and not really the right attitude to say, oh, we need black-owned businesses and blah, blah, blah. But I think, like, ultimately the point is that black people they're not, I guess, like, integration doesn't work if there are systemic injustices against a particular group of people. And within that context, that's why I guess the term I want to use for it almost like is kind of black protectionism, like the idea, the same way a country would have protectionism where they protect their resources and their economy and stuff like that. Basically the idea that black people as a kind of subculture within America should have the same priorities of making sure that their communities retain some economic independence and resilience. And yeah, I guess it's kind of like the liberal fantasy would be like, well, why doesn't everyone just kind of come together and completely integrate without any kind of complexity at all? And the reality is, well, I think everyone would agree that would be the ideal, but you can't really have that until you remove the systemic barriers and obviously the historic kind of privileges that white people, especially in America, would have. Yeah. So yeah, that's just, like I say.
And that's a good take, Michael. That's a good take. Congrats, yeah, well done.
I'm so woke.
Yeah, so Furious Styles also talks about why are there guns in liquor stores all over these neighborhoods, but not in Beverly Hills. And his answer, isn't that great, I think, because he says, well, they want black people to kill ourselves, which I think could be true, just in indirect way. Like, I think the best thing to say about this is, like, white people living in, say, Beverly Hills or wherever, or like, they don't really care. Like, they don't really want black people to like shoot each other. Or, I mean, you could say it's good for politicians that happens, so they can, make white people afraid of what goes on in black communities. But like in general, I don't think the problem is like white people just do not care about these neighborhoods. And that's the thing. Like, it's the same thing when at the end of the movie where fucking what's he called, Ice Cube or Doughboy, like we've referenced it before, says, oh, look at all this foreign shit on the news, but nothing about Doughboy's brother. And it's like, yeah, that's the point I agree with. It's like, yeah, these communities are just completely neglected from the news, from like white people just don't care about them. So, it's not that they want, black people to kill themselves. It's just like they don't care. Like they can kill themselves, that's fine. They do what they want. We're just gonna ignore it. We're gonna just push this issue away from us, which happens in every single American city. You still get, every single American city, with a high African American population, you still have massive segregation. Even though that isn't technically meant to exist, well, it still exists. And of course, it's not legally meant to exist, but of course it still does exist, like just a byproduct of the larger economic issues that are present, in America that affect the African American community quite a bit. And that's the thing. It's because of this systemic economic issue, which Furious doesn't really touch on too much. He doesn't really go at that. It's quite conspiratorial thinking, really. They want us to kill ourselves, instead of just like, nah, this is just kind of like capitalism, and you guys are at the bottom of the food chain, and to be fair, you are at the bottom of the food chain because of systemic racism. But right now, what is killing you is the fact that it's capitalism more than anything. But of course, the movie does not go that far, or Furious Styles does not go that far. Anything to say on that?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, I basically do agree. Like, I guess it tries to establish a more direct antagonism than actually exists in reality. And I think that's kind of basically the issue with what he's saying, because it doesn't allow for, that's kind of the ultimate problem. Like, it's not just like from the perspective, like, it doesn't really affect, white people if black people believe that white people are evil, really. If anything, the main issue is how it could affect black people if they're not able to properly identify what the actual cause of their kind of subjugation is.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not ordinarily like white people going, I want all the black people to kill each other. It's more just like they don't really care because they've got, their...
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
bank.
He's not like totally like 100% wrong, because it's like, indirectly, racism has caused their situation, or you can say even directly. It has caused the situation, but the thing is, what is happening right now is like, I mean, a white person who is doing like the gentrifying, they don't care if they're kicking out a black family or a white family or a Hispanic family or a Korean family. They just they just want to make a profit, which that is capitalism at the end of the day, and it just affects black people more again because they are unfortunately among the poorest like community in America, and that is of course because of systemic racism. So again, he's like not 100% wrong, but he isn't exactly on the right path, I'd say. Furious Styles. I had a question I wanted to ask you, Michael.
Yes.
Do you think that Furious Styles is taking the vaccine?
I think probably not.
Am I taking the vaccine?
Well, I mean, the SNL made a whole joke about this. How basically, it was the Tom Hanks as a Trump supporter on Black Jeopardy.
Oh yes.
And one of the questions like, the government says they want you to kind of put in your details into this system for medicine or something. I can't remember, but something like that. And then Tom Hanks buzzes in and is like, I don't think so. That's how they get you.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously all the black people are like applauding, like, yes. And I do think there is that kind of aspect of like there's a strong overlap between black culture, I guess the black political consciousness, and a lot of kind of working class white populism, where they have this idea that there is this conspiracy.
Well, I wouldn't say it's working class white populism. I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's right wing populism.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, I think it's. So I guess when I say working class, I mean obviously like not. I guess so. Obviously, Tom Hanks in the episode is supposed to play kind of like a bit of a kind of average Joe kind of character, and I guess kind of that's what I'm thinking, because I imagine, like, for example, I guess the thing is it's kind of spread. I feel like definitely in the past it wouldn't have been the case that kind of your upper class, like George Bush Senior style Republicans would believe there's an evil globalist conspiracy, but nowadays that seems to be more common.
It is definitely more common. But yeah, basically, I just thought about that because Furious Styles does appear to be a guy who would not take the vaccine. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but that does seem to be the case. But again, that it's understandable considering how many times in the past the United States government has treated black people quite badly. I think there's a lot of historical precedent there, so that fear does make sense. And again, like it's those scars, the wounds that have been placed upon that community. And again, I'm just like, he's a fictional character. I'm just assuming this, of course, But I just found that question quite interesting. But anyway, so we basically then just get to the end of the movie. Ricky, of course, dies. Michael, R.I.P. to Ricky. It is quite a sad scene. It's quite a sad moment when he dies, and of course, the scene when they get back to the house, and his mum and his girlfriend are just like crying their eyes out. It's pretty sad, of course. But I do want to have, again, it's a criticism of the setup to get to this moment, kind of like the thing with Furious Styles before. Yeah. It's just not set up that well. Like he says, Ricky says, "Oh, I'm gonna let's split up." He says that to Trey, and of course he dies because he splits up and he's not looking up at the car coming around the block. And it's just, as soon as he said that, "Let's split up," I was like, "Oh, he's gonna die. Oh, he's 100% dead." And of course he, just before he dies, he has conversations about joining the army. He had his test scores come back for his SATs, and of course he just passed as well. And it's all just it's just set up so obviously, like he was going to die. Yeah, unfortunately,
it's a bit cliche.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit cliche. So it is unfortunate because it's so telegraphed. You can tell it's coming from a mile away. But anyway, Michael, anything else to say on that?
Well, I guess the only other thing, I mean, I don't know if this is moving on, but I just wanted to say about them going to kill get their revenge kill at the end. I must admit, personally, it was really hard for me not to be like, yeah, do it, go kill them. It's really hard not to get invested in them, just going out there and just making the score even.
Yeah, well,
it's like, do it.
I would say it's even making it even because like Ricky is not a gang member. Like Ricky didn't do anything. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
So he's
if anything,
he's just like he was just a brother.
So you're saying they should have killed some of like their innocent like friends.
I mean, I'm not saying they should have killed him. That would make it even.
No, Luke, I think you're right.
Okay, yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, like they got their comeuppance, and that was great and all. But yeah, I was thinking that might not happen. Like they might have a gunfight and fucking what's he called, Doughboy might die. Yeah. But of course that didn't happen until 2 weeks later. Of course, when he got murdered. But anyway, so let's talk about, I guess, the overall theme of this movie, Michael. And you can, because I think we're done with the plot. The overall theme, which is quite obvious, is that African American males, their life choices aren't great. And immediately when you start this movie, you get hit with a nice fact: 1 out of 21 Black American males are murdered in their lifetimes. And of course, I think it says the majority are by other black people. And the environment they are being brought up in, it is very easy to... a phrase came to mind, Michael. A phrase came to mind. Yeah. The phrase was, "Black lives don't matter." And that is interesting because I believe there is a movement which kind of encapsulated that sad truth and demanded change and demanded the opposite, that black lives do matter, or just black lives matter.
Yes.
And that is kind of the... Of course, 25 years later, that movement was born. But it does. You got these constant police helicopters. The constant gunfire, like those scenes where what was she called? Brandy. That's it. When she's just sitting in her room, just doing homework, and she can hear like gunfire going off in the background. That's what living in South Central LA is like, or a lot of other black communities around America. And it just like these people, just their lives just do not matter. Nobody cares about them. Nobody cares about these places. And that is really that is the central, I guess, theme of the movie. And then it lists a lot of reasons why this is the case. And of course, the police, like gentrification, etc., etc. And of course, we need to bring up, of course, Doughboy saying all that foreign shit on the news, like nobody cares about these places at all. Anything to say on that, Michael?
No, I mean, I think definitely, I don't know, because I think it's an interesting point, because obviously, the reality is that definitely, and everyone likes to point out that the majority of black people are killed by other black people, and therefore,
when you say everyone.
No, I mean, when I say everyone, what I mean is some people, I guess. So there was a comment. People were saying if you're going to say Black Lives Matter, why say that to white people? You should say that to other black people, because black people are the ones who are killing, other black people. I remember seeing kind of some people saying that, obviously people who would be, I guess, right of the spectrum, but maybe kind of like the people who are right of the spectrum, but kind of, trying to be maybe a bit moderate about it. They're saying oh yeah, of course Black Lives Matter, but if you think Black Lives Matter, well, you need to address the real issue, which is, it's the kind of thing I think Jordan Peterson would probably say. And I think, obviously it's worth making kind of films and like art that acknowledges that fact and kind of wrestles with that fact, because obviously it's an interesting point. And I think, like, obviously everyone in this film who gets killed, I think gets killed by black people in this film, certainly doesn't show black people as like this universally like wonderful group of people struggling against like white oppressors. Instead, it does show black people perpetuating cycles of violence, which obviously negatively harm themselves.
But who put them in that cycle in the first place, Michael? Who put them in that cycle in the first place? That is the key thing. And we'll talk about. Shall we talk about the police first?
Yeah, I did want to talk about the police.
Okay, so I've got a nice extract from a New York Times article. So as a child, Trey, of course played by Cuba Gooding Jr., sees how even a black police officer doesn't take his father, Furious, seriously when he reports a home break-in. When Trey is older, the same officer pulls a gun on him during a routine traffic stop. He quickly learns that the cops are there to neither protect nor serve him or his neighbours. What Singleton shows us about the relationship between the police and black residents may be well understood now, but at the time it was rare for the black community's view on policing to be so well embodied by Hollywood. I was always taught to be wary of officers as a young black man, but this was one of the first times I saw the rationale for that fear on screen in a major American film. And again, this came out in 91. I think a lot of people kind of got the gist 1 year later in 1992 with the Rodney King riots. Of course, after he was beaten, I think everyone should know what Rodney King is. He was beaten for, I think he was running a red light, and like 6 police officers pulled him over and just beat him like while he was on the ground. Yeah, just that's the LAPD, man. And so again, this the reason why this movie, again, like if this happened today, it would be like cliche almost if you saw this in a movie, but this was quite stark that this happened at that time. I think Do the Right Thing had some scenes with police officers and not being respectful again, but nothing like this where a police officer literally pushes a gun up to Cuba Gooding Jr.'s face. Anything to say on that?
No, I mean, definitely I think that it's obviously it is such a big thing now, and I imagine that lots of people wouldn't realize the fact that lots of I guess it was like an idea that like being a police officer was kind of like a wholesome thing. And I think there is still that kind of like idea that exists, and so I imagine it exists in America, in like the white suburbs. You have like the police officer, and you'd be like, oh hey, and obviously it's something which I think you see a lot in children's media, like it's like the police officer, the fireman, and they're kind of just like the friendly people on the block. And of course, therefore, I guess it would be quite like a stark contrast for people to realize actually when police officers have huge amounts of power and are, I guess, like in communities where people really have no systemic ability to fight back against abuses by people with huge amounts of power, turns out they abuse that power, which obviously should be obvious, but I think it's I can imagine why lots of other people wouldn't have thought about that before this film came out.
This is I think maybe an eye opener. Again, along with the Rodney King, I have to keep on mentioning that because that is, I think, the real, of course this movie it only grossed 57 million, so but of course, showing this in a major American film, like the author of the extract of what the piece I just read out said, that was I mean, I wouldn't say great, because of course you don't want to see those depictions, you don't want to see like a black kid being threatened by a police officer, but that's what happened. And obviously that goes to another point that Singleton is making. Well, the broader point is Black lives don't matter. The police, who they're meant to serve and protect, can just literally stick a gun up on this guy's face, and if he killed him, he'd get away with it. And that's the thing, it's a black police officer and a white police officer. It's a black police officer. So, it's an issue that, again, is not just... This is the thing where a lot of like liberal activists are like, oh, hire more black police officers. Like, that don't make a difference. I think you saw that in Straight Outta Compton as well, actually. I remember the scene where I think the black police officer was harsher on Ice Cube than the white one, because the black police officer, I think the gist was he was trying to prove that he was on the police's side, and it's the same thing here. It's just like a lot of a lot of police. What would you call them, Michael? Police stations, police departments, police department. That's it, police departments. A lot of police departments have black people in high positions, and black people aren't treated any better because of it. So it shows, Michael, it's a bit of a systemic issue, shall we say? Systemic. That word is kind of crucial. But anyway, Michael, I do want to touch on something that I did think of when watching this film. And of course, we talked about how the police, that there is a systemic problem within the police, but that this movie does offer like an alternative path if you want to see it in terms of if you are of the opinion that systemic racism doesn't really exist, this movie does actually offer you a path to go down to basically like and enjoy this movie if that's what you believe. Because the question I'm posing is systemic racism a theme of this movie? Because this movie makes clear that black fathers should shoulder their parental responsibilities. That's Lawrence Fishburne's character, Furious Styles. That's what he does, and the movie makes it clear that he's kind of different to other black fathers who aren't there for their kids, and he is there for his kids. And of course, you could argue, well, let's say it's a systemic issue, that's why black fathers aren't there for their kids. But that's a personal choice that he makes that basically allows his son to live a better life. So is this movie supporting the argument for like, oh, where are the fathers, etc., which you hear a lot on or back in the day certainly you heard on like Fox News when they were talking about crime in African American communities. I mean, you think about it, the only one that goes to college out of the three is the one with the father, and he was basically rewarded for making the correct decisions. He does not go and shoot up those three people who killed Ricky. He gets out of the car, he goes back to his dad, he enters college, he goes to Atlanta in Georgia in college, as does his girlfriend, and basically he makes personal decisions, and he's guided because of his father, and he is able to escape the situation through education and self-empowerment basically. And if the father stays around, and you take personal responsibility, you can get yourself out of the situation, being in the hood, like Trey does. So that if you can look at the movie that way, I would argue that it's not like that, and in fact that it can appear, if you take all these factors, John Singleton is actually promoting this, like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, stay out of trouble, and you can have success in this country if you're black. Systemic racism doesn't exist, all of that. That is, again, that's an angle you can take by what happens in the actual movie, but I don't think that is the correct take to take away from this movie, though, because here's the thing: you think about how Ricky was killed. If we go back to that scene, Ricky walked down that path, or he turned to go left, didn't he? Because they split up. Yeah. And Trey turned out, he walked the other way. If they had just decided to walk different ways, in terms of what would have actually happened in the movie, Trey would have been shot, wouldn't he? Yeah. Trey would have been shot.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, therefore, it is somewhat still about luck. It's even if you do the right things, like Trey was doing in this movie, he still could have been shot. And he still could have died. And he was lucky that it wasn't him, and instead it was Ricky. And you think about Ricky as well. Ricky was going to college. His mother really liked him, and it was Doughboy, his brother, who was a kind of a failure. But Ricky was going to college. He had good grades. He was a good young man. He wore that suit, and his mother was really proud of him. He was doing the right thing in this society, and he still got shot. And again, he could have survived. Trey could have been the one that gets shot. So basically, you can still make it out of the hood or these poor situations, but it does require luck. It is, and I think that is basically true in life. Of course, it's possible to make it out, but you need some luck along the way, and there are systemic factors like crime and the police, like we talked about, and gentrification, which can all make that just harder to do. We talked about at the start with Lawrence Fishburne. He's talking to his son about how you gotta take responsibility. You're not going to end up like those kids. You're going to end up differently. Look how they'll turn out, and look how you'll turn out. And then of course, the police. A second later, he gets robbed because of the crime in this neighborhood, and the police come and don't take him seriously. And again, it could have been him getting killed. So basically, although it may appear if you're looking at it a certain way that, oh no, this movie isn't really saying systemic racism exists, it's not actually saying that.
No, yeah, I mean, I think part of the kind of what you were touching on at the beginning, which I just find interesting, is that I do think there's a bit of an interesting sort of a tension between, on the one hand, the fact that you want to acknowledge the reality of systemic racism, and on the other hand, the fact that you do want to give individual black people some kind of sense of empowerment, like, because a criticism that's been made, particularly of, I guess, the new term for this kind of general concept is critical race theory, and a criticism that people have made of it is they've said, well, this is not a very empowering kind of, I guess, aspirational message for black people, and could in some sense actually be a contributory factor to black people. If black people think that they can't escape from the problem because it's all systemic, then that's going to be, that's basically going to possibly actually be an exacerbating factor to the systemic issues in itself. And I actually think that's a genuinely like kind of interesting tension, because I pretty much am of the camp that you do want to try and have some kind of aspirational ideas about, hey, if you do certain things, it can actually make things easier for you. Like you can study really hard and probably succeed, but then obviously you do need the reality that it's harder because of social injustices. And I find it really interesting. But obviously what you were saying, because that's not exactly relevant to what you were saying is that this film itself kind of is touching a lot on the systemic point by showing how there is a kind of unfairness to how things play out. That basically the fact that these people do kind of jump through some of the hoops in terms of, like, obviously he has a dad, which you point out is a really important thing, and yet still it does seem to come mostly down to luck. And
he got killed easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would definitely agree that that's something that is, yeah, I mean, it's obviously literally in the film, and I think it definitely does point out that there is a systemic problem. I think maybe you could say this film, in a variety of contexts, lacks a kind of clear thesis statement. I think that was kind of, we've already sort of touched on it by talking about Lawrence Fishburne's little kind of speech where he, like I said, kind of seems to insinuate that white people are actively trying to keep black people down. I think, I would say actually what this film is saying about race isn't necessarily totally clear, and but I would agree with you that it certainly has a systemic dimension to it. I don't think the film kind of synthesizes all of the kind of different things it said about race into necessarily a coherent message, is the impression I get.
No, it's not really a coherent message, because it is kind of, but like the what Furious Styles of Lawrence Fishburne, what his character says is, of course, quite different to the perspective given by fucking Doughboy, which is, they don't care. Or there's a difference between what Doughboy says, they don't care, and what Furious Styles says is like, no, they want us to kill each other. There's a very different, but they're said by two different characters, so maybe that's just two different perspectives. So the movie isn't like just has a single coherent message on race. But I do think that there isn't the over. I guess the closest thing to an overall message is systemic racism. It does exist, and of course you can get lucky and get out of it. It does. That's the thing. It does have a hopeful message, and I think that's what John Singleton wanted to do. Because by not killing Trey, by having him go off to college, I think he did want it to end on a hopeful note. He wanted, like, I think he talked about having role models and so on, and this was what he wanted to see. A role model on in a movie who was from this particular community, but who made it, who manages to get himself out of this situation, and something to aspire to. And perhaps it would have enhanced the theme if Trey also died, to show you can do all the right stuff, but there's no getting out of it. But some people like Trey, the fact is they do get out, and it's fine to show that, especially if you want to end your movie on a kind of a hopeful note, even though of course it does say that it doesn't really end on a hopeful note that much, because of course fucking what's he called, Doughboy, it says he dies 2 weeks later, so it's like, that's what can happen. And with Trey, hey, you can get out as well, but again, you consider Doughboy like he's literally brothers with Ricky. And Doughboy, of course, is in this gang culture. Ricky is an athlete who may go to college, like just brought up in the same household, the same parent, and one would have, if he survived, have a very different life to the other. And I just want to read this one last extract from that New York Times piece that I was reading from before. It's what sets the stage for Ricky to be killed at the end of Boyz in the Hood, and is the cause for the crime and nihilism embraced by Doughboy, who's played by Ice Cube, of course. The characters' choices start to make sense. They are either embracing the chaos that surrounds them or trying to escape it. So that's the thing. Like with Ice Cube, he went down this path. It's easy to figure why Ricky would want to escape the chaos, but with Ice Cube, it's like, well, this is my life, so this is all I've got to do. Well, I'm gonna embrace this life, and so then of course, it starts to make sense why, these cycles of violence that you were talking about before, Michael, are perpetuated over and over again. And again, how do we get out? How do we get out of it? Kamala Harris has a plan. What was her plan in like the 2020 election? It was like you get a tax credit if you start a business within 3 years in a low income community, and you get that was her great plan to solve fucking systemic racism. But anyway, so that's it on that topic. You wanted to talk about, Michael, the difference in how the hood is portrayed in this movie and other movies. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, basically, so I did a little bit of research by watching some other hood movies just because I was interested. Just wanted to educate myself, which I think is really important for us privileged white people to do. So I watched a few, and what I noticed about this film actually is that it's a lot more. It's kind of like, I suppose it's a slightly more nuanced portrayal of the hood, because the other films which I was watching were almost universally showing it as like this negative, horrible place. Even one of the comedic films I watched, which was Friday, which I've already mentioned, was kind of playing like a black comedy, where it was comedic, but it was like the point is the hood is like a horrible place to live. And I thought it was interesting that for large swathes of this film, it is actually kind of showing like how it's kind of nice, how there is a bit of a community, how everyone's kind of friends, how, I was thinking about, for example, just the scene of like, it's a minor thing, but like the way that the kid almost gets run over, and then the guy runs out, rescues him, and the guy's like, oh, sorry, and it just seemed like, and I feel like in literally like every other hood film I saw, the kid would be there, and then the guy would maybe run out, and then like the person driving the car like, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of my way! I hate you! And then like it would show the main character like, man, this really sucks. And that's not to say like those other films are like bad or kind of black and white, black and white. But I do think it's nice that this film kind of shows how, while the hood has lots of negative elements to it, there's lots of aspects where people would, be drawn to the community, and why it is, because there was another one I watched which had a similar kind of aspect of like the idea of leaving the hood was like one of the conflicts to it, and I was thinking to myself, there's literally no reason why this guy wouldn't just leave the hood immediately. Like, it's kind of like he gets an opportunity, he's like thinking about it, I'm like, why would you think about it? This place is horrible. Isn't this, I can understand why it is that some people might be like, hey, sure, you have a chance of dying, but at the end of the day, it's my community, it's my hometown, it's where I kind of know people, and I kind of like that aspect of like just having that slight kind of tonal nuance in there.
Okay, so you think it's good that they portrayed the hood as not like the most awful thing ever?
Yeah, because I think that's probably like true.
Okay, I don't think it's. I don't think people. Here's the thing. I'm not sure it did, but of course I haven't watched those other movies you did. But if it did, then I don't think that's that great. Again,
I mean, well, I think the thing is, it overall shows it's a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, maybe it would be. Obviously. Maybe I'm just thinking specifically with the context of the films, and to be honest, it was almost like kind of arbitrary, the films I watched. I went for films I was like, oh, I've heard of that film and I've not seen it.
Okay.
On like, there's a Wikipedia list of like hood films.
Yes,
because it's a whole genre, and I was like looking at the hood films, like, oh, I've heard of that film, haven't seen it.
Maybe
so I watched Menace to Society.
Okay.
New Jack City.
But not The Wire. I mean, that's a TV show, to be fair. But that's the thing.
To be fair, The Wire would have been a bit.
I think of The Wire, and I just think, oh yeah, there's absolutely no way you like. Oh yeah, this is a community in the hood. Oh yeah, people like
so
this.
Maybe it's inaccurate.
Yeah, I mean that's. I didn't get that sense from this movie though. Like it's a nice, it's a kind of a nice place just because it's sunny, but I don't think it'd be that great to live in there necessarily. You've got the police sirens and you've got the gunshots constantly. It's like. Yeah, no, I don't think this is a great place that has a community. I just think you got the wrong aspect from that.
Oh, maybe.
No
yeah,
offense.
I mean, maybe it is just that because I think I don't know. Like the main thing that's got me thinking about is the whole scene surrounding the barbecue. Just because it seemed like they're having a fun time.
That's just one scene because Doughboy's back. That's not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure really about that. I have to say. But anyway, let's conclude now, Michael.
Yes.
Do you want to go first, or shall I?
Well, I guess you could go first, thing as I was talking most just now.
All right, okay, I'll go first. So, yeah, I think honestly with this movie, it's a good coming of age movie. It deals with some topics which up until this point hadn't done before, and you consider or hadn't been done before in American film. And of course, Boyz in the Hood, when it comes out, is important. It comes out in '91, a year before the LA riots. And you think about the political climate it comes out in. You've got the war on drugs going on. You even had a Reagan Bush poster in 1984.
Yes.
In 84, of course, and a kid gives the middle finger up to him. You also have, of course, Bill Clinton, who was going to become president a year later. And of course, yeah, he was, even though it's so funny hearing people like describe Bill Clinton, who pushed, very racist policies, as like the first black president. He was the first black president because he took photos with black people. It just shows how bad America's race relations were. And yeah, this movie comes out at a time where, you got NWA, of course, with Ice Cube literally in the movie. Like, this was, I guess, just another like important piece in America basically understanding or white America being forced to understand what is going on in these communities, and it was like an important film to start things off, I guess. And so yeah, you have to give it respect for that. And the actual movie, yeah, like I said, it's a good coming of age movie. The characters, they're likable, the performances are good, and yeah, I think this is something that I did enjoy, and I did also enjoy the kind of the nuance, or our discussion anyway, about the systemic racism in this movie. So yeah, I have to say, important movie, again, like, because it was so influential, and just because it's the first, if it came out like 20 years later, probably wouldn't be that lauded, but I still like it. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, Michael. An 8 out of 10 for Boyz in the Hood. I think that's fair. So yeah, what do you have to say on it?
I guess I will sign off on everything you said about the film's significance. I think the main... So obviously the kind of plot and the kind of function of it as like a coming-of-age movie worked absolutely fine. I think with some aspects of the plot, especially towards the end, it did get a bit cliche, which we already touched on. I also think some of the race relations aspect was also a bit... I guess just a bit simplistic, and something which I forgot to mention is when the black police officer pulls them over the only time he does, he kind of like goes on like a bit of like an evil villain monologue. He's like, I guess you could say, I just like feeling powerful. I like knowing I got punks like you and I can just kill you whenever. And it's like, I know, literally did, like, I was actually, it did make me think about like a super villain monologue, which is just a little bit silly. And obviously there's kind of the reverse of that, which is when Lawrence Fishburne does the kind of full-on lecture and like everyone gathers around. And then of course at the beginning, which again I also didn't mention, is the white teacher being like, the Indians, Native Americans. It almost seems as if it's like, oh, those white people always accidentally being racist. And it just seems like, I don't know, just a little bit like on the nose. There are a few aspects of the kind of the way the film dealt with race. It just felt a tiny bit on the nose. It's not as bad as, most kind of films made from the white perspective about race. But, and then also the fact that kind of when it comes to the more complicated parts of the film's commentary on racial politics, I think there wasn't necessarily like a clear message. Like, I couldn't really come out of this film saying, oh, I really liked the theming of the film, because to be honest, I'm not totally clear on what the theming was. And I would contrast it to, for example, Do the Right Thing, which I thought had a much more kind of interesting and also kind of intelligently kind of bleak message on race relations, which I preferred. So with that said, I'm going to give the film a high 7. So not quite an 8, but yeah, I'm feeling a high 7 on this one.
Well, you say you preferred the Do the Right Thing.
Yes.
Because of its bleak view on racial relations, but you said before you liked that they kind of had a hopeful, aspirational, inspiring message in terms of...
In this film?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, I guess the things, I think I liked that from kind of like a plot point, or maybe like kind of like an emotional resonance point. Rather than from a thematic point. Like, I think thematically I was more like neutral on showing that. Like, I don't think it really affected my opinion. Yeah, it was more just like, I was like, oh, it's kind of a nicer place. And to be honest, I will actually say that Do the Right Thing was kind of like an upbeat. I mean, you described it as a dramatic comedy, or rather, when you were reading on Wikipedia, it said it was a dramatic comedy. And I think, yeah, Do the Right Thing was kind of light-hearted too, and like kind of upbeat. It just was, obviously, what it actually had to say about race was kind of bleak. And that's another reason why I find Do the Right Thing kind of interesting, because there is that contrast between the overall feel of the film and then the actual message of it.
Okay, no, that's good. So yeah, thanks for explaining yourself. Yeah, I like how you also pointed out, yeah, the cliche deaths and the setups for those moments in the movie were, yeah, a bit... Yeah, inorganic, of course, which is what we commented on before, and of course also affects why I only gave it an 8. But an 8 is still a good rating, Michael. And talking of ratings, we are now going to go through receipts and the Suicide Squad, Michael. The Suicide Squad, it's got a Rotten Tomato score. We guessed last week what it would be. You guessed it would be 73. I guessed it would be 91 because of James Gunn. And James Gunn came through for me, baby, because it's 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. 92. 19, you were 19 off. I was 1 off. You are now, you were on 46, you get 19 added to your score, you're on 65, I was on 74, I get only 1 added to my score, so I'm on 75, and that means there is a difference of 10 between us. Now 65 to 75, the of course lowest is the best. So yeah, I brought myself back into play. I've clawed back 18 points on you. So that's big for me. You were getting away with it there, weren't you? But now it's all to play for once more. Only 10 now. So anyway, Michael, what are we going to be looking at next week?
Well, next we're going to be looking at a far more intelligent piece of social commentary. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the full name. It's something like Borat.
Just say Borat.
Cultural learnings of America benefit glorious nation of Kazakhstan or something.
Yeah, it's Borat.
Wonderful.
We have done Borat. So yes, thank you for listening. We've been selecting and reflecting on Boyz in the Hood because of its 30-year anniversary. And as Michael said, join us for a similarly just great, delve into America and racism and all that shit with Borat next week. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.